This is the VoiceOver Marketing Podcast, episode number 37. Hello and welcome to this episode of the VoiceOver Marketing Podcast. My name is John Melly, and this is the podcast dedicated to teaching in-depth and advanced marketing strategies for people in the voiceover and audio production professions. My goal is to help you make more money by showing you ways to leverage your time, charge more for your talents, and allow you to spend more time doing the things you want to do in your life. Hey there, it's John. How are you? Thanks for spending some time with me today. I do appreciate it. This episode is sponsored by Audible.com, and I've made an arrangement with Audible to get you a free audiobook, a free trial, and you can get a free audiobook. All you have to do is go to vomarketingbook.com. That's VO for voiceover, marketingbook.com, and you can sign up and get a free audiobook. How cool is this? And please support the sponsors because they help offset the costs to produce this podcast. There's hosting fees, and then there's not only for the website, but for the audio too. I use a separate server for that, and that costs money every month. And so it'd be great if you support the sponsors because the podcast also receives some financial support as a result of that. So please go to vomarketingbook.com. Hope your summer's going well. Ann and I just got back from our vacation. We went out to Seattle, Washington, and Portland, Oregon, and had a pretty good time there. Lots of neat things to see. Beautiful scenery. Mountains so close to the ocean. It's a different perspective for an East Coast kid like myself. Anyway, went out there, saw the Rush concert in Portland, Oregon. Wow, what a show. I mean, it was awesome. And Ann even came with me. The lovely Ann joined me at her first Rush concert. So it was kind of neat to be able to share that with her. She knows it's a big part of my music life, that band. And it was nice to be able to just share with her an experience that, I'm sure she's not a bigger fan of Rush as a result of it. But it was nice to share that with her so she maybe understand a little bit more about why I am so passionate about their musicianship. Not necessarily the personalities of the musicians. They seem like cool guys and decent people and smart folks, but their musicianship is, in my opinion, unparalleled. And so it was a great show. The guy sitting next to us was from Australia and flew from Australia to Portland, Oregon to see the show. So they have a dedicated fan base, and maybe I'll do an episode on the band and how they did their own thing. They traveled their own niche and created their own music, and developed a loyal following long before iTunes existed, because it's an interesting story if you don't know it. But aside from that, really good vacation, except I got sick on the last day. I spent my last day of my vacation in the hotel room in bed, and frankly, that stunk. Because then I had to get on a plane and fly all the way back to Boston the next day. Not a lot of fun. And then Ann got a cold. Not a ton of fun. But it's been a busy summer. And I have a great episode with Zephan Blacksburg, who is a return guest from episode 15. We spoke about creating videos, and we touch on that in our conversation. But I want to get to that right away. But I just want to thank everybody who's, I've been away for a bit, and it's been an interesting summer for a lot of reasons, some of which I will not go into. But we went on vacation, and I got sick, and then I had some other stuff I had to take care of, and it's just been nuts. But I want to thank Ron Ruby and John Ewan for reaching out saying, hey, dude, we need more episodes. And I was very touched by that. And Ron, you also sent a very nice message to me via SpeakPipe, and I will play that message in another episode. My interview with Zephan is so long that I just want to get right to it. But I wanted to give a shout out to you, Ron, and to you, John, for saying, hey, dude, we want more stuff. And for everybody else that has been asking and saying, we love the episodes. It means so much to me. Send me a message, and I'll give you a shout out in the next episode. Zephan Blacksburg is a repeat guest, as I mentioned before. In our first episode, our first conversation, we talked about how to use videos in your marketing and how you can create different types of videos in your marketing. This conversation with Zephan is totally different. We go from mindsets of abundance, mindsets of being open to different ways of focusing on goals. We have discussions about how there's really a huge amount of opportunity going on today. And we talk about credit card hacking, not credit card fraud, but using credit cards and leveraging things. It's a wide-ranging conversation, but Zephan is a go-get-'em kind of guy. And that's one of the reasons why I like talking with him and working with him. And I recorded this episode a few weeks back, and it's been in the can. And Zephan, if you're listening to this episode, you have been extremely patient with me getting this out. We've messaged back and forth, and you know some of the back scenes of the delays in getting this out. But listen to it with an open mind. He's got a really cool event coming up that's totally free. It's a cyber conference, so you don't even have to travel. Check it out. This is a cool conversation with my good friend Zephan Blacksburg. So let's go talk to him now. Well, welcome back. As I mentioned earlier today, we have a returning guest to the podcast. You may recall, if you've been listening to the podcast at all, episode 15, I interviewed a good friend of mine, Zephan Blacksburg, and the concept or the title of that podcast episode was How to Use and Create Videos to Market Your Business. And this was one of the most popular episodes we've ever done. So I guess voiceover people are interested in videos. But Zephan, refresh everybody's memory. How did this whole journey come to you? And you've made a bit of a change in your life, haven't you?
Yeah, so in May of 2013, I left my full-time job working for Apple. So I was one of those guys who was working at the Genius Bar fixing your broken iPhone.
Oh, hey, listen, I got something here. I got you to... I'm kidding. Go ahead. Go ahead.
And that's what always happened was, I was kind of tired of everybody outside of work. Oh, well, my phone just stopped working. Oh, well, sorry, I don't work there anymore.
Go talk to Zephan. Yeah, he can fix you.
Right. And so I started my video business in May of 2013. And within the first 6 months, it was really surprising. I was impressed just by how far I had gotten, on my own and not having a coach or anything like that from the start.
Yeah.
Within 6 months, I had videos inside of NFL sporting arenas and NHL arenas from Philadelphia to Los Angeles.
Cool.
And, so that was a pretty big deal. And actually, I also had an invite to the White House to shoot some video and photos for a day.
What was that for?
That was for a Department of Homeland Security, back when Janet Napolitano was the head, was giving a big speech on kind of like Obama and their stance on the Middle East.
Uh-huh.
And so it was pure luck just being in the right place at the right time and someone needing an assistant shooter for the day. And I got to go along for the ride.
Very cool.
And, so business-wise, everything was pretty darn successful. And I worked my butt off really hard from, May of 2013 until I'd say about August of 2014. And I started to notice some things. I started to realize that it's one thing to build and grow a successful business, but if you're not really taking care of numero uno, it's not as fun.
Totally agree with that. It's a lesson I think anybody who gets some success learns eventually.
It's one of those things that actually my grandmother reminds me of constantly now. So on top of her giving me the guilt of like, oh, you have to get married before I leave this earth, she also gives me quite a few great lessons. I call her every day when I'm headed home from, whatever gig I'm at.
That's nice.
And she always ends the call by saying, don't forget to take care of Zephan.
What does she mean by that?
Well, she's always asking about, what video shoot I'm coming from or what I was doing. And, she hears how I'm always busy and traveling and working. And I think that, she really wants me to take care of me, too, because there's more than just your business. There's you, there's your family, there's your personal life, and, you kind of have to come up for air every once in a while.
Right. Again, I couldn't agree more. And it's hard because there's so many distractions. If you're at all talented and qualified in what you do, a lot of people want pieces of your time. And so you've kind of undertaken a journey to help you along that way, and you've had a lot of success with that. And now you're sharing that vision, opportunity, process with others. Am I correct? Which word was that? Process, basically, with others, right?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is a process, and part of it is the experience, because it's going to be a different process for everybody. I think the biggest thing is that most people don't even try to, start to live life. They're always so focused on, well, I'm always so busy. I've always got all this work and this and that, and there's an excuse for everything.
Right.
And so no one really stops and looks around and says, all right, well, this is great that, I've built a successful business, but they never enjoy it. And it's like, well, why are you doing it in the first place?
Either that, or they get so successful, but they make themselves sick and unhealthy that they're not able to enjoy it either.
Right.
Yeah.
They stop going to the gym. They stop taking care of themselves. And it's all around you're being unproductive because you're actually hurting your chances of being a good entrepreneur or a good employee, for the future.
So you started your own podcast this year. Why don't you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, so it came out of going on a bit of a spiritual journey for 4 days back in August of 2014, and just kind of realizing that there were a lot of things I had been neglecting in my own life, and it's one thing to say, oh my gosh, I know I've been working and I haven't focused on myself. It's another thing to really feel that and understand, what it feels like to know you're not taking care of yourself.
What were you feeling, Zephan, if you don't mind sharing? What was it that knocked on the door from the inside and said, "Hey, hello, you need to examine this"? What was it, if you don't mind sharing it?
Yeah, well, so there's this really great, I love the motivational posters and inspirational things we see online and all over the place, but there's a really good one where it says, hey, do you remember that one thing that you said you were going to do before you got all busy and you forgot and you just didn't do it? You should go do it.
Uh-huh.
And that's what rang true for me. So when I was on that trip back in August, we were actually hiking up the side of a mountain in the Berkshires, and, we're looking out over this overlook at the top. And just before we got to the top, in the middle of conversation about something totally unrelated, I was just like, I know what I have to do. And whoever I was talking to was like, what do you have to do? And I was like, I have to go to California. And as ridiculous as it sounds, I always said that when I was in college, I graduated in 2010, I was like, I'm going to walk across that stage and I'm going to get a one-way ticket to California. And for some reason, I never did that. I moved back home, I got a job, and I just kind of settled into an average life.
Yeah.
And in that moment when I figured that out, I was like, I don't really know why I have to go to California, but I do know this. I know that I feel very lost right now. I do know that I've built a successful business, but it's not making me happy. And so I need to start kind of following these ideas that pop up in my head of like, hey, I really should do this, or hey, it would be really fun to do this. Because if you're not following what you think is going to be fun and exciting and changing your life around, then you get stuck in that cycle of, wash, rinse, repeat.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I like that.
And so I went home and I bought a one-way plane ticket to California.
Where'd you land?
I bought a ticket from Baltimore to San Francisco.
Okay.
And when I did that, one of my friends was like, well, I'm moving to Denver. You should totally stop here on the way. And so I changed up the ticket. I actually went from Baltimore to Denver. And I spent a week in Denver. And I went Denver to San Fran, San Fran to Los Angeles to Dallas, Texas, and back home. So I spent a whole month off of my business and just kind of away from my life and away from my home. And I wouldn't have traded that experience for the world.
That's really cool. I love those cities that you mentioned. Denver, oh gosh, I could live in Denver, I think. But the only thing I'd miss is the ocean. They don't have have one of those out there. But San Francisco has one, and that's a great city too. They've got all kinds of great things there. And in L.A., did you go downtown L.A.? I've been on the outskirts of L.A. I've never really been downtown.
Spent a little bit of time in Burbank.
Okay, yeah, that's where I've been. Yeah.
Yeah. But the big thing about this trip is not only that I made the trip, but I found a way to do it. All the flights were free.
Okay, how did you manage that?
Because when you are 25 years old and you decide that, you want to start living a life that includes a lot more travel, you start to get creative. I started looking into the idea of travel hacking and how, I had seen these articles of people who have gotten flights to Dubai and Saudi Arabia and all these places for free. Yeah. So I'm like, well, if they can do it internationally, I'm sure it can't be that hard to do it domestically.
Okay.
And the cool thing about credit cards is that they have rewards points. And if you're not in debt and you have a good credit score, you have the ability to take out more credit cards.
Yeah.
And the big, I guess it's not too much of a secret, but essentially most, if not all, airlines have their own credit cards.
Yeah.
And about every 3 or 4 months, they bring promos around where you get about 50,000 Sky Miles if you spend whatever. Usually it's about $2,000-$3,000 over the course of 3 months.
Okay.
And, so for me, it's like, it's really easy. I buy 1 or 2 cameras and I hit that mark.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
So I started reading more into, getting, I got the Southwest card. I got, American Airlines, U.S. Airways. So I got like 4 or 5 different airline cards. The big problem there is obviously you can't spend $3,000 on each card,
right.
In 1 month.
That's like 12 grand, dude.
Right. Then you've got to get a little bit more creative. So there's actually, and there's tons of methods online. They're changing constantly, but the concept is called credit card churning, so or manufactured spending. And what that is essentially you get creative in spending your money. So I have rent every month, and my rent is $1,600. So this was an easy way to get, $1,600 worth of spend each month on the cards. But I can't just pay my landlord with a credit card.
Okay, so?
So there's tons of different methods, but the easiest way to go about it is, and buyer beware, look this up online first of how to do it properly. But and I know that we can walk in any CVS or pharmacy or whatever, and they have those prepaid Visa gift cards that you've given out to friends or family for birthday presents.
Okay.
So a lot of them have limits of $500 or $1,000. So if I buy 3 of them, $1,500 with my current credit card, I now have gotten that spend on the credit card. So I spent $1,500, and that goes towards my Sky Miles. And I technically haven't really lost any money because I now have these gift cards in which I can pay my landlord.
Okay.
So there's a lot of different ways.
So
to
you
go
give
about
the
it.
gift card to your landlord, say, "Here's my rent"?
Yeah, when I lucked out that my landlord is my stepdad, but
okay.
but it's just as good as money. Essentially, it's a prepaid credit card, so it's just as good as writing off somebody a check.
And people might be sitting there saying, "Well, yeah, it's his stepdad." The point is you figured out a way to do it. So that was one way that it worked for you. If he hadn't been your stepdad and you really wanted to do this, I know you would have figured out another way to do it.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the thing, that people go, "Oh, well, that just worked out because of that." No, it worked out because he figured it out.
Right. And it only took about an hour of research online and a couple of blogs. And
wow.
And there's actually another way, and I'll just share with you real quick because for everybody who's thinking, well, I couldn't do that. There's something called a Serve is a company that has these credit cards that are prepaid cards, or they're more debit cards, but you can refill them at Walmart. And I can use a credit card to place money on this Bluebird or the Serve card. And from the Serve card, they usually have online bill pay features. Uh-huh. So I can actually load this guy up from my credit card for the Sky Miles and then use the preloaded card to send checks in the mail to, my internet provider, my utilities, my landlord. So there's actually tons of other ways to make this happen, and they're very easy. And for me, it was like, well, a few extra steps in my day for paying the bills gets me some free airline tickets. I'm not going to complain.
It's called leverage.
Yeah, and research.
Yeah, that's clever because it's money that you're spending anyway, and you're like I said, you're leveraging the spend. You're using it to basically acquire other things, which is really smart.
Yeah, and so I would say the first step in my journey just towards living more meaningfully was living more smart. It's doing the research on how can I get the things that I'd like to have in my life, without having to earn more or work harder.
Yeah, and I guess, there's so many places and directions I can go with this. And where do you find the information? You just Google whatever you want? It's like, how can I find blank? I mean, what'd you do?
Yeah, there's a lot of really great websites out there. My go-to is Reddit, and Reddit, it's reddit.com. It's
Sure.
basically a huge aggregator of content from all walks of life, and there are particular sections you can subscribe to based on the topics that you're interested in.
Yeah.
So that's my huge one for where I've kind of learned a lot of everything. On top of that, there's a lot of really friendly websites out there that teach you how to do all this stuff. Like nerdwallet.com is a really good one. I think there's like one called like Flyer Blog Talk or something like that, and it's about being like frequent flyer and stuff like that. So there's tons of blogs out there where these guys, they're literally teaching every single day how to do this stuff.
Nerdwallet.com?
Yeah.
I'm going to get these links from you because we'll put them in the show notes. My wife, Ann, is really good with coupons. So she's like a genius with it. There was a time there she was doing stuff kind of like you were doing with airlines, but she was doing it with Rite Aid, which is a pharmacy chain here. I don't know if you have it in your part of the country.
Yeah, we got them down here.
But she was actually making money from Rite Aid for a while.
Oh, yeah.
It was crazy. But we're not that, there's like the extreme couponers where they go to like these grocery stores and they're buying a whole bunch of stuff they don't need so that they can get up enough overage to buy, strips of beef and all that kind of stuff. She's not like that, but she's really, really savvy. So she's going to be interested in this episode and all these little things that you're going to share here too. But this isn't really what the topic of the show is about. This is how you kind of achieved your trip to California. And you had this thing saying, you know what, I got to go to California. So what happened in California? Was it a great trip? You said you wouldn't change the experience for your life. And you also walked away from your business for a month. And I'm sure people are like, how did that feel? Were you nervous? Did you come back to a mess? I mean, what? All that. Tell us your story.
Well, the big fear in going out there was like, I'm going to come back to nothing. Like, I'm literally making one of the most destructive moves in my life because I'm not working.
But you did it anyway.
Well, so part of me was like, how can I do this smart? It came back to that whole, like, let's do what we want to do, but make this decision in a way where we can really make this work. So fortunately, most of the places I was staying between Airbnb and Couchsurfing had Wi-Fi. So I was like, you know what? I've got my iPhone on me, and I think I might have brought my laptop with me for the trip. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm not going to do any actual video work, but my business has gotten to a point where people just kind of come in from all sorts of places and referrals and things and email me like, hey, I'm looking for this video. So I did get about anywhere from like 4 to 6 new client emails coming in while I was gone.
Great.
And so with this handy little app that I have where I can actually send out invoices right from my iPhone, when stuff like that would come in, I would give them quotes. And, in email, just at the end of the day, I would check it all before I went to bed. And I gave enough quotes and took enough 50% deposits up front that when I got back home, I logged into my invoicing software and I was like, I made $6,000 and I didn't even do any of the work yet.
That's great.
And, and this was only my second year in business, and I'm proud to report that I had made $60,000 that year, which was, I doubled what I had made the year prior, which was my first year in business.
That's awesome.
Not only have I beat out the statistics of, 70 or 80% of businesses failing in the first year, but on top of that, they say that, 50% of those that make it to the second year fail too. So,
yeah.
That was a big deal for me. And when I realized that, I was like, hey, that was pretty easy. I just pre-booked and said, hey, guys, look, like I'm not going to be home for like 3 weeks. I'm happy to take your deposit now, and we'll get a date on the calendar for when we're going to film this. And most of them, they were like, well, we're not even ready anyway. So yeah, 3 weeks out is perfect. Like let's pick a date now. They didn't want to do everything next week. So it really worked in my favor. And so just getting home to find out that the money had not disappeared, I'd actually made just as much as I made the month that I was home working my butt off every single day was really surprising.
I just want to interrupt for a second, just remind our listeners, some of them may be thinking, well, what's this got to do with voiceover? Well,
Yeah.
Zephan is not a voiceover talent, but he is a freelancer, and he does his own business, just like we have our own freelance voiceover and production businesses. And he made a really key point in that he took a 50% deposit before he did the work. And that's stuff that I do a lot of that too in my business as well. And I just want the listeners to think, you know what, you can do the same thing. If you're not, a lot of people get upset about having to chase money and get money from clients. There's a way you can set your business up so that you get money up front before you turn the microphone on. And so you're starting on the plus side. So I just wanted to kind of ring that bell before we continued on. So anyway, go ahead, Zephan.
Yeah, and I would also add to that, for anyone looking and saying I have a different type of business.
Yeah.
I actually don't. I have to show up with a video camera and provide a service to them, just like you guys have to show up to the microphone. So this is not something where it's like, I can create videos on the go, because I really can't. I have to be there at least in person to make the work happen. So, just to show everybody, this is more of how I took my business and kind of created both the freedom and the lifestyle that I wanted, and made the business more successful in the same process.
Right. So the podcast, talk to us about the podcast.
Yeah. So after, this trip all around the country in November, came back, fulfilled all the work that I had booked for December, and Christmas Eve rolls around. And I've got a couple of roommates, one of them being my cousin. And I decided on Christmas Eve, we're two young Jewish guys. The only thing that's open is a Chinese food restaurant. I grabbed my cousin. I said, we're going out to get Chinese food, and then we're going on a road trip.
Without coming back first? You're going to pack a bag?
We literally packed our bags, drove to the restaurant, had dinner, and left for Pittsburgh that night from Baltimore.
I love it. Go ahead.
So part of it was kind of like, still had the itch from traveling from November. And part of it was more of like, well, I completed all my work for this month, and no one really hires people between Christmas and like New Year's Day.
No, it's dead.
Yeah. So, and both in voiceover too, there's probably tons of stuff leading up to it, but for a couple of weeks after that, you probably don't hear a whole lot.
Right.
So this was another part of like, let's go back to trying to create that lifestyle and still being able to run the business from the road. We went on a 9-day, 3,000-mile road trip. It started in Baltimore on Christmas Eve, and we went basically up to Philly, to Pittsburgh. We went out through Ohio, out to Indy, made our way from Indy all the way down through Louisville and Nashville, all the way down to Atlanta and Jacksonville, Florida. And Jacksonville was our halfway point. And we drove back up the East Coast all the way home, and we did it all in 9 days.
Gosh, that sounds brutal to me, to be that car that long. But, hey, you had fun.
Well, and I think it's one of those things, I'm in my mid-20s, so it's one of those things you kind of have to do right now. But
sure.
The point of it is, it's the lifestyle I wanted, right? So, whatever it is that you want to do, this is more of showing you that whatever you want to make happen is possible. You have to figure out another way to do it other than, I want to go out and ride a yacht around for a week. Okay, I don't have $10 million. How do I do it?
Right. Rent one or charter one or go in with a, you can take these vacations. You don't have to own the boat to be on it.
Yeah. So the podcast came in when we're driving home. I think it was like January 2nd. And we had been in Virginia Beach for New Year's. And we drive home, we're passing through D.C., and I'll never forget, he kind of turns to me and he's like, there's this spy museum that just opened up in D.C., we should go. And I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, I've been eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and living out of a car with you for the last 9 days. If I don't go home now, I'm going to rip your head off. So I was just like, vacation over. He's like, no, I'm buying tickets on my phone right now. I was like, all right, I'm not stopping.
Wow. Okay.
And, so it was just one of those points where it was like, all right, like the fun is over, time to get back to the real world. And I'm just thinking on the rest of this car ride home, I'm like, New Year's just happened. We're kind of starting this new year off, and everybody comes in with their resolutions, and the gyms are full for 2 weeks, and then it stops.
Right.
Everybody gets to this point of like, oh yeah, I want to lose weight, I want to do this, I want to do that, and 2-3 weeks into the year and it's already gone. I'm like, well, that kind of sucks. I don't want to be that person who makes these goals and they disappear in the first month out of the year. So I was kind of thinking there for a moment, and I was like, I want to make sure that I live 2015 as, my most purposeful and meaningful year yet. And I got home and I saw somebody posted this article on Facebook, just a news article, and it was called something like 2015 to be a year of purpose for many people. And I was like, wow, I really resonate with that. Year of purpose is exactly what I'm searching for. I want to make this year my best year yet. And at the time, I'd been following a lot of up-and-coming podcasters. The Serial podcast was taking off, and just started listening more online. I'm like, this is really cool. Someone can sit in front of a microphone, interview some people, they edit it together with, a couple of jingles in the background to transition between segments, and they've got a podcast. And thousands upon thousands of people are listening worldwide. And so on January 27th, we launched the Year of Purpose podcast, and within 72 hours, it was on the front page of the iTunes New and Noteworthy list.
Good for you. That's awesome.
So it's been, it's been an interesting journey so far, and we've had a lot of really amazing interviews. We're about to hit, I think episode 40 is launching either this upcoming Tuesday or next Tuesday. Yeah. And it's kind of been a bit of both documenting my journey of where I've gone and how I've grown over the last 6 months. We're recording this about halfway through the year, and how, I'm setting myself up for the second half of the year and beyond that. And then I'm also interviewing people to, find out what makes them tick. How did these people become millionaires and successful business owners? And I get to see pictures of them on Facebook traveling to, Thailand or wherever they want to go and living their dream life. So it's a combination of, my learning process and hearing how other people did it and my own journey of doing it myself.
What are some of the topics that you've discussed? Do you just talk to people? I haven't listened to a lot of your episodes, so and also just want to give the audience a flavor of what the podcast is about. Do you tackle specific topics in an issue, or do you just kind of have a broad-ranging dialogue with someone?
Yeah, so a lot of the times it's set up very conversational, because when I first started, I was like, yeah, I'll write out a script of questions and I'll ask everybody the same thing. And by the second episode, I was like, this is so boring. Yeah,
you got to be entertained yourself, too. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's really important for me. That's why you're on this show, because we're not talking about voiceover, but we're talking about stuff that it's the backdrop to being able to do voiceover, and that stuff that we all like to do. That's why I like to have different folks on. So you're here.
Yeah. No, and I totally appreciate it. And so, we've had a huge variety of people. I had my buddy John Bowes, I actually met in Las Vegas when I was there for the NAB show, the National Association of Broadcasters, which I'm sure a lot of you podcasters and audio guys have heard of.
Sure.
And they had NMX, New Media Expo, going on at the same time, and I see this poster for Podcast Movement. It's a conference, and I walk up to the booth. I'm like, hey, are you going to that? Because I knew I'd already signed up for it. He's like, yeah, I'm actually a sponsor. And we started talking, and he tells me about this crazy journey he took where he bought a plane ticket to, I think he went to Peru for 3 months. And he wandered into the jungle and took ayahuasca and, hallucinated for a week and learned from a shaman. Jeez. And really learned where he wanted to go with his life. So I'm not saying everybody
You had to take a hallucinogen to go find that out?
I'm not saying everybody needs to do that, but it's more of documenting, everybody's own individual path towards figuring it out, where they want to go and what they want to do. And so it's everything from that end of the spectrum of, totally crazy to, the people who have built successful businesses, from the ground up, true rags to riches story.
Right. Okay. So the Year of Purpose podcast is not all about going out to the jungle and licking poisonous toads and stuff like that.
The point is just to get across that everybody has their own unique journey and how they figure it out. And the other thing is I talk about is really asking better questions, because so many people read these articles of 5 steps to finding your purpose. And guess what? you're not going to find your purpose by the end of reading that article.
No.
It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. So what do you mean by asking better questions? That's a good... I like that.
Yeah, I always think back to, there's this movie, I, Robot, with Will Smith, and it's about kind of how robots are taking over the world a little bit. But the original creator of these robots, the whole story of the movie is that there was a murder and they don't know how he died, but he left behind this hologram that can answer specific questions about the event. And Will Smith's kind of standing there and he's like, well, how did you die? Who killed you? And the hologram is like this programmed computer. So it just only says, it's like, that is not the question. Like, I can't answer that for you. And I think this is really one of those things where it's like, if we sit here and we're like, well, what is my purpose? What am I supposed to do? You can't answer it for yourself because you know inside and it's somewhere deep, but you don't have the ability to get those words out intelligently. So you don't have the way to put that into words and into meaning.
Somebody once said that it's kind of like trying to perform surgery on yourself.
Right. You can't do it.
Right.
And I'm still learning so much about how to ask better questions. But I think that if we sit there and think that a little article that says in 5 steps you can find your purpose, then you're not going to find it. And if you sit there and think that, it's just going to come to you one day magically, I don't think you'll find it either.
So what exercises or what activities do you do to prompt yourself to ask better questions?
So I did this thing that I've been labeling it life rescripting. And having come from a movie background, I majored in video in school and I've produced a couple documentaries and things.
Yeah.
I come from the background of there has to be a story.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, all right, well, what is my story? Who am I right now? Because fortunately, when I started to do all this stuff, I'd actually been coming out of a relationship at which, as many people know, when you come out of a relationship, you kind of lost sight of who you were as an individual because you were so used to being with another person.
Mm-hmm.
So this was a great opportunity for me. I'm not saying everybody has to be there, but it allowed me to kind of really look at, let's sit down and who is Zephan? And I have this legal pad that always sits next to my desk to kind of remind me of who I said I was. And I was, I just sat down on the couch one day and popped on a movie and took this legal pad and I was like, I'm going to write down everything that I know to be true about myself right now. And it's literally as simple as, my name is Zephan. I have a business. I enjoy going to the gym 3 times a week. I just listed it all out on paper. Here's what I do with the financial aspects of my life. Here's what I do with the personal and the family relationships in my life. Here's what's going on with my business. And just write down the facts. And look at that like a story, because we've all read stories or watched movies and we're like, that was a bad movie. Well, what made it a bad movie? And usually you can pick out, well, I didn't like that this happened,
okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So look at your story and what's the part that you don't like? Maybe you wrote down that I'm only making $50,000 a year and I want to be making 6 figures. Okay, that's a starting point. You now have a piece of your story that you want to change. So I went through this whole story and picked out, here's all the pieces that I want to change, and I rewrote the story with the new changes in place, if you will. So, my new story was I want to take 3 big trips this year, 1 to Southeast Asia, 1 to Costa Rica, and 1 to California. So I already knocked out California. I'm actually looking at Costa Rica right after my birthday in September. And Southeast Asia is actually a very reasonable possibility, if not Ireland, because I actually have some friends who want to go to Ireland. So 3 trips, right? So
Yeah.
I wanted 2 international and 1 local but still relatively long-distance trip.
Yep.
I also said things like I want to grow the podcast. I want to row with the rowing club, which I've been rowing with consistently 3 days a week. I wanted to improve my posture and my flexibility because I know that sitting at a desk all day, and I'm sure some of you voiceover guys can relate, you're kind of hunched over. So, I'm sure you get that too.
Oh, I'm big into mobility.
Yeah.
It's huge.
And I said things like I want to volunteer in more community service projects, which was great because when I set that intention, I actually ended up being asked to sit on a board of directors for a new nonprofit. I said that, I wanted to get my diet in alignment, which I've been working every day to make that happen. I wanted to public speak more, and so on and so forth. So I wrote out this whole story of like, here's what I want my life to look like.
Mm-hmm.
So the big part of that was that I set the intention to do all these things and to make all these changes in my life. And then kind of going back to that whole, figuring out how to get the plane tickets, you now just have to figure out how to do all these things.
Right.
Once you know where you want to go and what you're looking for your life to be like, it's much easier to start figuring out the steps. If you have no clue where you want to end up, then it's going to make it a lot harder. And this applies to your business too. Maybe everybody listening is thinking, their lifestyle is great, but their business isn't where they want it. Well, it's no different. What is the story of your business right now? Where are you financially with your business, with your clients in your business, with the freedom that your business gives you, or, how much time out of the week are you spending on it?
Like you said, ask better questions. I think that's great.
Yeah, so it's no longer, where do I want to go in my life, or what do I want to do that brings meaning to my life? But it's, okay, I know that I want to make these 3 big trips happen. How do I make those happen? How do I afford those? How do I prepare? And you just kind of start asking questions based around where you actually want to go instead of saying, I don't know where I want to go.
Very, very sharp, man. I love it.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I got to tell you, it's been a heck of a journey. It's a roller coaster, just as life always is.
Yeah.
And there's been plenty of ups and plenty of downs. But, I can tell you on that trip when I went to California, at one point in time, I found myself with a VIP backstage pass at the Trans-Siberian Orchestra show, which one of my friends is the lead violinist for, and I got to see her, and she's traveling all over the country doing amazing things.
That's neat.
At one point, I got to an invite to Facebook headquarters. The next thing you know, I'm standing outside of Mark Zuckerberg's office while he's on a conference call. So, I was standing there right in Hacker Square, and his office is right on the ground floor. I'm literally 6 feet away from him. So it was a very cool experience, and I think, it's opened up a lot of things for me that have happened. And I just have to say, when you set the intention of where you want to go, things just kind of start to fall in place. And when you start to ask the world for just a little bit of help, I can't ask the world for $1 million, but I can ask the world to help me out with growing my business. It starts to just happen.
Yes. It's one of those things that unless you experience it, it's hard to believe. Because I know what you're talking about, because I remember it was one year, this was, I don't know how many years ago this was, maybe 10, and I had a business, it had some debt, and I said, you know what, here's what I need to do to get out of that, and here's what I want to earn in the business. And I actually sat down, and it was very modest at the time.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, I just want to not have this debt over my head. And it's like, how am I going to get this out of here, out of my mind and off the books? And I said, this is what I'm going to have to spend on the internet, and this is what I'm going to have to spend on this, that, and the other thing, and this is what I'm going to have to earn in order to pay all that off and then have something left over at the end. And like I said, it was very modest. And it's the craziest thing. There's magic in writing it down, and it's not typing it into the computer for me, maybe for other people. For me, it's a physical process of taking a pen to a pad of paper. You said you use a legal pad, so you're a writer as well. And I started, like in the next week, I started doing these ads for a travel agency. And they were going to run on the station that I was working at the time. And then they came back to me and they said, you know what, we want you to produce the commercials for the market. And it was the weirdest thing. They wrote me a check, and it was for too much. And I called them up, and I sent them an email. I can't remember what it was. But I said, we had agreed on this, and it's you paid me this, and it's too much. I need to send it back to you. Well, she came back to me, and she said, send that back, but what we're going to do is we're actually going to make it a bigger one because we want you to do these other projects. And they were paying me in advance every month for like these commercials. And I had that debt knocked down in like 2 months. It was like, I mean, it was amazing. And it's just, I sat there and I went, huh. And then I just started, they talk about the gratitude and a mindset of abundance. And you can't just sit there and say, I'm grateful for all the abundance in my life. You can't say...
Yeah, that doesn't work.
It will if you believe it. If you honestly believe that you do have abundance in your life, because it's a mindset. When you have the mindset of, gratitude and seeing an opportunity versus scarcity, that's the key. You see the opportunity instead of, oh, there's nothing around me. There is so much opportunity right now that people aren't taking advantage of. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Nobody needs to be poor. I firmly believe that. As long as you have all your abilities and capabilities and stuff like that, there's no reason, because there is so much opportunity out there. It is amazing, but you are absolutely right. Once you, as you said, set the intention or you write it down, there is something about putting it on paper and saying, this is what I want, and the doors just start to open. It's crazy.
Yeah,
people listening to this might be going, yeah, right. And I'm telling you, if that's your attitude, that's why you are where you're at and you're frustrated. Because if you're sitting there skeptical saying, oh, yeah, that's just a bunch of you-know-what, caca, then I can't help you.
Yeah.
and Zephan can't help you either.
And I really kind of hate to be the jerk and to support that, because it's a little bit mean. But, yeah, you are stuck because of you. You are the only obstacle in your own way of living and working the way that you want to. And I was there. Look, I'm telling you, I was in the same boat thinking, how is it that when I wake up in the morning and go to a retreat and do yoga at 7 o'clock in the morning and eat a raw organic breakfast and learn from all these amazing speakers and people, how is that going to change my life? And I'm living proof, and I don't think that it's a fluke.
But step back. It's the openness of your mind and the willingness to say, you know what? Let's give this a shot. Let's see what happens. There are folks who would never consider taking that retreat. They go, I'm not going to that. And that's what I'm talking about in terms of the mindset. And that may work for some people, may not be, you might not find it in a retreat. You might find it windsurfing or something. Everybody's got their own way that they tap into whatever it is that drives them. You went on that retreat. I've gone on life design kind of things. I've done Vision Day with Rob Berkeley. I don't know if you know Rob. He was involved with Glazer Kennedy, your previous employer. Bill Glazer, right? You used to work for them. Yeah. We've done a ton of stuff together. Rob does a great thing for Vision Day. I did a day with him, and I did some stuff. I would say, honestly, it had more of an impact on stuff outside my business than it had a direct impact on my business. I started doing more mobility, more flexibility, and healthier things for myself. I started taking drum lessons, because that's what I always wanted to do, was learn how to play drums. And you start putting that out there, and it turns out that one of the DJs here said, yeah, I take drum lessons. And he took them from a guy who has a drum shop that's about 3 miles from my house. And so I started taking from him. I've been studying for 6 years now. And it's a ball, and it's a totally different thing. So, it doesn't always have to be just about business. You need to round out your life. Like your grandmother says to you, take care of Zephan. Well, there are other things that I have to do besides voiceovers and podcasts and audio production and all that kind of stuff. I'm married, so I got a wife, and I need to be there for that. And I've got a family, and I got to be there for them. But I've also got to take time for me, and that's exercise, diet, and go upstairs in the attic and pound on the drums.
Yeah.
But anyway, I kind of went off on a bit of a tangent there. But anyway, you are open to the opportunity, which is what I was really trying to say.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to, if you don't take care of yourself outside of work, you're not going to have a healthy body or a healthy mind to use when you do get to work.
Yeah, there's a concept that I'm working on, and you could insert the different type of career. In episode 16, the one just previous, the one just after our first episode together, Zeph, and I had my trainer on, and the episode's called episode 16, The Goose That Lays the Golden Egg. And we're the goose, and we got to be able to lay the golden egg. And then we talked about the concept of the voiceover athlete, in that we need our bodies to do our jobs. And just like a professional basketball player needs their body to do their job, if we're not able to stand up or sit down in front of a microphone and we're not able to read the copy, and we're not able to breathe in such a way that we control our breathing so that we can get through a number of lines of copy without going in the middle of the sentence, if our bodies aren't healthy, then we're not going to be the best voice talent that we can be. So we are athletes. You're an athlete. If you're not healthy and you don't have good balance, or your hands are shaking, you're not going to be able to hold the camera well. I mean, I know you're probably using a tripod and all that kind of stuff, but still, if you can't stand on your feet and be around people all day long while they're setting up the lighting and all that kind of stuff and doing retakes, how fun is that going to be for you?
Yeah, I mean, I've had video shoots where I'm on my feet for sometimes as long as 17 hours.
I was going to say 15 hours, right? Yeah. So, I mean, we're all athletes. And like you said earlier about flexibility, sitting in front of a computer and, hunched over, you get that caveman thing where your neck's all cricked. Well, think about the airflow of that if you're speaking through that craned neck. I'm doing it now. Listen to the difference in the quality of my voice versus if I hold my head up straight and I create a clear breathing path for the air. I mean, you could hear it in my voice. Here, just bring it in here like that, and it's all constricted. Sit up straight, and you get a nice clean sound. It's mind-boggling, but we are athletes. So if we're not taking care of that, and we're not taking care of the stuff outside the job, then we're not going to be good, just like you said. 100% agree. 100% agree with you, Zephan. Anyway.
Yeah, so I kind of have a model with the podcast very similar to you guys. I've got a nice, mic set up on a boom pole. I've got my soundproofing foam all over the walls. So, I mean, I'm used to doing what you guys are doing, too. Mm-hmm. And I've got my sound mixer sitting here next to the computer, all my preamps and everything. So I think that for anyone listening and thinking, oh, well, he doesn't have to do the stuff we do. Yeah, I do.
So what's the next step for you for this Life Unscripted thing? What are you doing with that?
Yeah, so we are launching a huge summit at the end of August of this year, 2015. Originally, we had 24 speakers, and then some people started to hear about it, and we've now bumped it up. We have 36 speakers everywhere from New Zealand to the UK to the US of A, and it's been a really cool adventure so far. And we're going to be launching all of these interviews at the end of August on a free summit, the Life Rescripted Summit. And from there, we've got a lot of really cool things that we're going to get started with. Right now, I'm working on writing 2 ebooks, a part 1 and a part 2, and hopefully very soon here, I'm looking to get started on writing an actual book that we're going to self-publish to Amazon. So a lot of exciting stuff going on. The podcast is still running strong, and would love for everybody to check it out. It's yearofpurpose.com, YEAROF purpose.com.
Yearofpurpose.com, and that's a free summit?
Yeah, that summit is totally free. That's at liferescriptedsummit.com, so it's life, L-I-F-E, Rescripted, RESCRIPTED summit.com.
That's awesome. And all you have to do is just, I guess, put your email address in. And that's a virtual one, right? There's no travel, right?
Yep, this is all virtual, so you won't have to fly to New Zealand to talk to my friend Mikal, who I had on there. So,
what are some of the topics that they're going to cover? Just curious.
Yeah, so we have some really cool people. We have Nick Unsworth from Life on Fire, which many people have heard of, and he really talks about building a successful business and a life that you truly love. We're going to have Kate Erickson from Entrepreneur on Fire as well.
Okay.
And she's going to be talking about walking the fire path and the path towards building a successful business. But then we also focus on things like life and body. So it's not really it's meant to be a well-rounded summit. All these people go out there and there's the marketing or there's the social media summit. Mm-hmm. This one is focusing on life, body, mind, and business.
Nice.
So we've also got people who talk about meditation. We've got a great talk by a guy who wrote a book about being the nice guy, Mr. Nice Guy. And so that's more of, from a customer service point of view, how you can get the things you want and still be the nice guy. We've got a couple of fitness people on there, so it's a really great mix.
That sounds great. And it's all free. And is there a deadline you have to register by or anything like that? Or because people will listen to this podcast at different times.
Yeah, so I mean, it's launching August 23rd, 2015. So anytime, up until that point. And, of course, while it's going on, you in case you miss some of the episodes, you're still more than welcome to jump on anytime between August 23rd, and it's going to last for about 12 days. So anytime, into the beginning of September there, you should still be able to jump in and grab it. So, yeah, it's going to be available for a little bit there, and, we're, of course, happy to have everyone participate.
That's great. Zephan, it's always fun to talk to you. You've always got some really good stuff. Episode 15 was a great episode. Anybody hasn't listened to that, that's on how to use videos to market your business, and now this one here. So, totally different topic, but, I think we both shared some neat ideas for the audience, and I want to thank you for that.
Yeah, and thank you for having me. It's always great to speak with you and to catch up and see where things are going for you. And, I think it's really cool to show, the progression of how, I think last time we talked was really when the business was getting off the ground. So it's great to speak about, the growth that's happened in between.
That is very cool. And congratulations on that. That's awesome.
Thanks.
All right, Zephan, be well.
All right, see ya.
I have been collecting, real quick, I want to do an episode for you specifically. So I have been collecting questions from people. I get a lot of emails. I get a lot of messages. So if I don't reply to absolutely every email or question to you directly, please understand that I just can't possibly get to them all. But I want to pull some of them and use them as a mailbag episode. So if you have a question about voiceover and marketing and, business techniques, then shoot me a message, put it on SpeakPipe. That would be great, because then we'd get an audio version of your question, and that's more fun than me just reading the question. So just go to voiceovermarketingpodcast.com, and the SpeakPipe app will appear on the right-hand side of your screen. It also appears on your iPhone or your smartphone, too, if you are listening that way. And you can record a 90-second message. So ask me a question. I'm opening up the lines. I'd love to hear from you. And it's so much better to use different audio as opposed to just me reading the question. So send them in and we'll do the mailbag episode or something like that. Another episode that I have coming up it's going to be next week. It's all about technology and the surprising ways that we never thought it would impact our lives. And this is important because we want to be ahead of the curve. And I'm not going to tell you much more about it, but it's something you need to listen to, and it's something you need to be aware of and thinking about. How are you going to stay ahead of the curve? And it's not about microphone technique or, sound mixers or anything like that. It's like, how do we keep doing this? Because I've got some really cool examples that I want to talk to you about in the next episode that it's going to make you stop and think. We may think we can't be touched by certain aspects of technology, but technology is touching aspects of the economy in ways we never would have thought about before. And so that's next week's episode. Listen for that. It's a solo episode. It's not a guest episode, but I've got some thoughts I want to share with you, and it's important. So please listen to that. Send me your questions. That's all I have for right now, so I want to thank you for listening, and I will talk to you next week. Take care.
Our program originates in the Boston studios. We hope you'll join us again. Until then, we bid you au revoir, keep your chin up, and the best of luck.
Well, that's it for this episode of the VoiceOver Marketing Podcast. If you like this podcast, please subscribe to it at voiceovermarketingpodcast.com so you'll get notices of new episodes, and please share it with your friends and colleagues in the voiceover world. Also, it would be a huge help if you'd like this podcast and rate it on iTunes to help keep it near the top of the list. Feel free to share your comments and questions about this episode and future topics you'd like discussed at voiceovermarketingpodcast.com. And if you'd like more information on one-on-one coaching where we focus on growing your business, feel free to drop me a line at my cyber assistant's email address at mike@johnmelly.com. Thanks for listening. Now go out there and share your voice with the world.